Born in 1805, the story goes that 14-year-old Joseph Smith was visited by God and Jesus Christ, who called upon him to restore the true church in preparation for the end of the world and the second coming of Christ. He later transcribed what became the Book of Mormon. According to this new religion, Jesus and Lucifer are brothers, and their father, God, is a human man with a physical body. This God is one of many gods, and he has multiple human wives who give birth to billions of living souls that are sent to earth in order to learn how to become gods themselves. But the most important Mormon belief is Zion. They believe that in 600 BC, their Jewish ancestors fled Jerusalem, built a boat, and sailed to America, where Jesus Christ visited in 33 AD. Mormons were taught that they must find the New Jerusalem in America, and were told that it will be on Lamanite borders, meaning there will be Native Americans there to deal with. They expanded from New York to Ohio and Missouri, but found it difficult to get along with the locals. After going to war with the Missouri militia, about 10,000 Mormons were forced to leave the state in 1839. They then went to Illinois and established their own city, which soon became one of the largest in Illinois, and was granted a charter that allowed them their own municipal court and a militia. In 1841, over 50 years before Theodore Herzl's first Zionist Congress in Switzerland, the Mormons ceremoniously dedicated Palestine for the return of the Jews. Also that year, Smith announced that the angel demands polygamy. Within 3 years, he takes on 40 wives, including girls as young as 13. Like the Masonic order Daughters of Rebecca, they adopt the symbol of the beehive, a symbol of cooperative industry, and Mormons were encouraged to breed and expand. Many took child brides. In 1842, Joseph Smith, who came from a family of Freemasons, was given the rare honor of becoming a Mason on site, meaning that he did not need to do any of the work. Along with other leading church members, Smith was initiated into Freemasonry through all 3 degrees with the wave of the Illinois Grand Master's wand. Within months, thousands of Mormons were initiated into Freemasonry and were using their lodge to grow members of the Mormon Church. The official Mormon endowment ceremonies were introduced, and they reflected Masonic rituals. In 1844, Joseph Smith announced his candidacy for U.S. presidency, and shortly after, was charged with treason and locked up in an Illinois jail, where he was murdered and fell from the window with the Book of Mormon in hand, as the story goes. Joseph Smith was now a martyr, and his prophecy was proven to be true when the Mormons were forced to leave Illinois in 1846. They then began their exodus to the Utah Territory, where they massacred the indigenous population and found their New Jerusalem. The U.S. government allowed the Mormons the freedom to colonize the West and expand their manifest destiny. But after the dirty work was done, polygamy was federally outlawed, and the once anti-American Mormons became hyper-patriotic and made the all-American nuclear family their new public image. The entire Mormon religion is based on the belief that the world will soon end and that a Jewish state must be created in Palestine. The LDS Church, who identify as descendants of ancient Israel, was the only religious organization to officially support Israel's creation in 1948. In 1989, Mormons founded a university in East Jerusalem. The LDS Church is worth billions today. They are the main contender for the most Zionist organization of America. And Charlie Kirk said that half of his team were Mormons. Greg Reese reporting. The Reese Report is now fully funded by my Substack subscribers.
Hi, everybody. This is day 1914. 1914. So make sure I'm on. Okay, and that was pretty powerful. That was sent to me, and um, yeah, it makes you speechless. But because I had the opportunity to go to Salt Lake City and take a tour uh, of the Mormon Temple Visitor Center, and also went out to the farms. Uh, the beehive is their symbol, and I, um, when you, well, of course, everyone knows that Richard grew up in in Europe. Maybe you don't know that, but Richard grew up in Europe and in Ireland, and we had the opportunity to have our own bees. So we understand what that means. Bees are absolutely amazing. They're just so amazing. They're my favorite pet. They're my favorite pet. I tell people that all the time. You even can go to YouTube and find our Maid in Drum Row old homeschool videos are still up on YouTube from when we had our bees. So this is let's start from the beginning, and then I'll get into my take on this video, what Candance Owens is doing in her research on the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and how that relates to our son's case, our case, El Paso. Let's connect some dots together. And yeah, matter of fact, when I just said that, I was like, oh my gosh, was working on my connect the dots. Yeah, I'll post that up. I haven't posted that up yet because everything has been so busy, really busy behind the scenes. And we'll talk about that today with Trooper Brookshier and his personal network and the DPS involvement, up to no good involvement in our son's case, and give you some history. So we'll start by saying it's 1,914 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room there on Fort Bliss, and he was taken to, and I can say it, it was the arms room. He was taken to the arms room. It's a lot goes on in arms room, and you might, I've shied away from naming the arms room, even though we have the seal on the door and all of the evidence that we have, because Vanessa Guillen she was killed in the arms room also. What we have been told is that the arms room is a choice place for violent crime um, because it is soundproof, because it's a soundproof room, and that's and his life was taken. Richard is a warrior. He's always been a warrior and black belt in karate. So he did do some damage before they took his life. We heard that one individual had to have emergency surgery, dental surgery done because his mouth had been bashed in. This is, a lot of information is coming out, and we know that Richard's body was stolen off of Fort Bliss, which is shocking because they have so much security. But we know that the DES Thomas Kane, he needs to be arrested. He was in charge of base security, and he was compromised. He was absolutely compromised, and we know that. And he really harmed, and he's part of the Mormon faction there. He's part of the Mormon faction, so that goes into what we'll be talking about today and that video. Richard's body was taken off of Fort Bliss, stolen. Okay, because he's a U.S. Army soldier. His body was stolen, and it was dismembered, and it was trafficked across the border into Mexico. And right now, we are in the very vicious negotiations, because they are vicious. It's so evil, right? It's so evil when you think about it. The vicious negotiations for the repatriation of our son's remains. That's where we're at right now. Um, and as you see from our Facebook page, and I do add, and I'll go tonight and post up some things on X. Um, and I've been posting on Truth too. So, you know, as you see all of that information, there's so much information, right? It's not crumbs. This is, like a 7-course meal, right? Even probably more than that. And it is, takes a while to chew and to digest. But it's very, very important for everyone to see all of the work that we've been doing and post it up online. But we've also have been working behind the scenes just as hard. I would say even harder. We've been working behind the scenes harder, and as you can see, those memes, the the screenshots and the videos and everything is giving you um, another way just to put together what is going on in El Paso and what is going on in the United States, for everyone to be aware of what is going on. And we've put it out, and there's been no cease and desist, right? Because what we have put out has been verified and verified over and over again. And it comes from the highest intelligence, right? The highest intelligence. So all of the naysayers that might be on the page or whatever, some people, it's very hard to digest. They don't want to believe it when they see it. This level of corruption, this level of compromise, this level of treason, and this kind of level of crime. And so it's just hard. So they can be in denial, and I really, that's, one way to look at it. Or they're part of cartel, or they're part of the Mormon faction. And, we all want to protect our little factions that we're in. So, that's what you'll see when you say, oh, this is fiction. No, this is not fiction. This is not fiction. And, I just put up about Montoya, about James Bonneau Montoya. What we have on him is not fiction. And it's very, very serious, because he could be arrested at any time. He could be arrested at any time for the perjury that he committed. And he absolutely committed perjury. There is no doubt about it. We have the hard evidence. And if it quacks like a duck and looks like a duck and acts like a duck, then it's a duck. And this is perjury. This is documents that that he swore were true, and they are not. 2028 is not true, right? 2028 is not true. That's false. We're in 2025 right now, right? And 2028 is years in the future. So, and it's not an oversight, because there's so many things wrong with that document. If you're a legal person, you absolutely see it. If you're not, you're not familiar with it, right? And so, we're here to tell you, he's supposed to use his legal name. He didn't use his legal name. He put James Montoya up there. His name is not James Montoya. It's James Bonneau Montoya. That's his legal name. And also, it's not district attorney, okay? It's the 34th Judicial District Attorney. That's the position that he is supposed to take. So it's very sloppy. Everything's very sloppy. And to sign it, um, to confirm everything is true, was sloppy and really illegitimatized the entire document, because not only was it sloppy, it was criminal. It was absolutely criminal. And because it's not legitimate, that uh, makes this a constitutional crisis. So, what El Paso has is not a prosecutor, not a DA, right? Which is mandatory for El Paso. You cannot leave the DA's position vacant. You have to have a DA, and they have no DA, and they've had no DA for months, and well, for years, because of Bill Hicks also was in the same position, that he was also illegitimate. And so they haven't had a real DA, and for years. And this is a constitutional crisis, an absolute constitutional crisis. And so, and why don't they want a DA? Why isn't the judicial system yammering and, yelling out? And why isn't Veronica Escobar? And why isn't Beto O'Rourke? And why isn't Tony Gonzalez? Why isn't that courthouse? Uh, you know, they should be pounding and everything and saying, look, we don't have a DA. We need a DA. We need a prosecutor. Well, they don't want a prosecutor because we have found that so many of them are absolutely need to be prosecuted, right? They themselves need to be prosecuted. And so that in itself is absolute proof that there is so much that people aren't upset that Montoya committed perjury and is not a legitimate DA, causing a constitutional crisis in El Paso, and letting that slide like that. And I would even say Governor Abbott, letting it slide like that. He's the governor of the state. Absolutely no way should he be silent on this. And, but, it is a constitutional crisis, a Texas constitutional crisis, because that statement, that document must be legitimate for him to hold that office, and it's not. It's not. So, and another real problem with the situation, and we put up the information, and it's not to pick on these people, right? It's to show evidence. This is not picking on anybody. This is to show evidence that his girlfriend, who he has a child with, was working in the clerk's office, right? Was working in the clerk's office. You know, that is like, what the heck? What the heck? So I think that. The conflicts of interest, the constitutional crisis, the corruption, those that need to be prosecuted. We have laid out, him being good friends with Anthony Acuna, the the El Paso ISD officer that shot and killed the most decorated FBI special agent in El Paso history, right? In El Paso history, that was unarmed. That was unarmed. And they say he had a rock in his hand. Well, if he had a rock in his hand, let's see the body cam footage. We want to see the body cam footage. Do we trust the El Paso ISD officer? No, hell no, we don't. Do we trust Montoya? Hell no, we don't. He's causing a constitutional crisis, right? And Anthony Acuna was, hiding behind his good friend because Montoya, well, his name was James Bonneau, because he changed his name for political purposes. His name was James Bonneau, and James Bonneau and Anthony Acuna were very good friends. They were besties. They were besties. And so he's hiding behind, not disclosing his name, who shot and killed Julio um, Cordora, the most decorated FBI agent in El Paso history. Uh, you know, Cordero. Um, Look, Julio deserves to be talked about. His name is indelible. And Anthony Acuna needs to be known to be the one that shot and killed him because we need to see the body cam footage. Because Julio's face was so damaged by the shooting that his family couldn't have open casket. So what we're being told, and from the authorities in the media about the shooting, is not what we're finding out, is not what the evidence has been given us. So, yes, we need to find that out, and that's deception again. This is, the whole paperwork that is causing this constitutional crisis is deception. The judicial system, the political system, is deception. The county clerk's office, deception, right? The 2028 stamp. These cases with the Walmart mass shooting, deception. Richard's case, deception. Julio Cordero's case, deception. And then we get to Charlie Kirk's case, and there is deception again. And we know in El Paso, a big part of the deception in our son's case and the Walmart mass shooting case is because of a Mormon faction assistant special agent in the FBI office named Connell Wenton. Connell Wenton is from a very prominent family, but not from the United States, from Mexico. Connell Wenton is from a prominent Mexican family of Mormons that settled in the colonial Juarez, Nova Casas Grande, colonial Dublin area. That area along the mountains, the huge Mormon faction area that are polygamists. They believe in polygamy. Not all of them are polygamists, but they believe that's why they went there. That's why, and that's in the history books. This is not something I'm making up. And a lot of French Canadian Mormons that were polygamists went there also. And that's why there is this, uh, these French names floating around, right? These French names. So they also came down from Canada through the United States to settle in Mexico so that they can have their many, many wives. This is a big problem. This is a very big problem. Polygamy is a huge problem. And I didn't realize what a huge problem it is, because now with Richard's case and this common denominator of the Mormon faction being connected to the cartel, the Mexican cartel, being very big players in this. And we know this from the LeBaron family, the LeBaron family. I hope I'm saying their name right. The LeBaron family. That's what I'm saying. These French Mormons came down and settled into Mexico because they're polygamous. But then there's the Brown case. There's other cases too, but the Brown case had the three American young men buried on their property in Mexico, in Chihuahua, Mexico. And when they went to investigate that, and I don't want to really spend much time on that, you can read it for yourself. They found that his many wives, didn't even know where they came from. They didn't even know their origin. They did not know their origin, right? This is a huge problem because the only thing that explains that is how young they were and that they were trafficked. Okay, how young and how trafficked. And so this is a huge problem with this polygamy, the slippery slope of polygamy. And uh, yeah, so, and we know that Dallas Hart, uh, the platoon leader of Richard, his father, James Courtney Hart, who is totally tied to Western frontier trading with Nadal Baim, has uh, multiple wives. Multiple wives, or did have multiple wives. I mean, he got divorced now. Um, so this is a big problem because that uh, what we've seen in our investigation and all of this is it drives people to criminality because they have a lot of mouths to feed, they have a lot of households to take care of, and it can get a lot of criminality, and a lot of them are dual citizen, and so that criminality seeps and roots in the United States. And that's why the LeBaron family were going back and forth a lot, right? And many other families go back and forth a lot. That's why the Brown family went back and forth a lot. It roots in the United States, and they do a lot of business in the United States. And then a lot of them live in the United States. Um, so this causes a lot of problem when they set up their uh, criminal network in the United States because they have such a this huge and I'm all for big families, but not for the crime that it's created, right? That all these households and what 40 wives you just heard that one. um was it Smith that had 40 wives? 40 wives, come on. Um, and, you have to be very, very wealthy to have that kind of household or many households to support. And so, but I can tell you this, that we know that the criminal element is a Mormon faction tied to the cartel. So there's no doubt about their criminality, and the LeBaron family is totally was assassinated. Children were assassinated. The wives were assassinated because of the criminal ties with the cartel, and then these three young men. Um, Americans found buried in Chihuahua in the backyard, totally part of criminality. So very vicious, very brutal criminality. And so there's no doubt that the crime is coming with it, right? And that they're setting in, and now they're going into the agencies, are going into the institutions, and that's where Connell Witten is a good example of that, because he's absolutely criminal, all right? And now he's hurting El Paso. He's hurting the peace and order of El Paso because he's not interested in keeping the law. He's there to cover up. He's there to leak. He's there to keep the crime going and the crime growing. And that includes the criminal trafficking and all of that. So, and that is worth a lot of money. They are making a lot of money, and the Mormon faction, the criminal Mormon faction, is worth billions. It's worth billions because we know that Woody Hunt is also up to no good, and he's worth a lot of money, and nothing goes on really in El Paso without his sticky fingers. And um so we wouldn't be in this situation where we don't even have a prosecutor, and no one is even clamoring about it. If it wasn't for Woody Hunt, we wouldn't be in this situation where we have an illegal as the chief medical examiner and no one's clamoring about it because Woody Hunt allows it. And we wouldn't have the criminal law magistrate court where the people's right to vote is being disenfranchised. Uh, you know, with these imposter individuals posing as judges, causing a lot of trouble, being being able to be manipulative and blackmailed and whatever, or just working for whoever appointed that to them there, right? And who's writing their paychecks. If it wasn't for Woody Hunt. And the same thing with Samaniago, with Ricardo Samaniago, the county judge. Um, he wouldn't be in that position if it wasn't the backing of Woody Hunt and his group, Paul Foster and um, Alejandro de la Vega. So this is, very clear that this Mormon faction plays a huge part, and it has put deep roots into El Paso and right over the border into New Mexico, going all the way up the pipeline to Utah. Of course, it's connected to Utah, and of course, Lance Twiggs's grandfather is the peer for Woody Hunt with Woody Hunt. And who's Lance Twiggs? That was the what is it, transvestite or trans person in this case, person of interest in the case of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And they're saying that well, the authorities are looking into it. The problem is you have Candance Owens having long, many year history going to universities and colleges with Charlie Kirk. I mean, they were, a team. She was part of the team, and she knows his team. And she knows Charlie Kirk, and she was in communication with Charlie Kirk. And so she is a reliable source to many. She is a reliable source, and her trust in the institutions has absolutely been destroyed. And you see that, and I understand how she feels um, because we see all the corruption, but our and our trust, and we have been so retaliated against. And so, I mean, they've just tried everything with us. I mean, the deep state, and I posted about the deep state, just crazy, absolutely crazy retaliation and cover up and deception. They have a huge team that comes after you, and they just have blood all over their hands. They have blood all over the hands. When I think of Glennon Oakley Jr. and so many more, Asia Graham and so many more that want to speak out about what's going on and everything. And of course, with Richard, they just have blood on their hands. Uh, and so we know through this case, which is a transnational case, that the institutions have been um, infiltrated with this Mormon faction and cartel uh, group, right? Group. Um, they've um, they've done a lot of harm, and they're in the institutions, and they're in the DPS, and you see what's happened with Patrick Brookshier, right? With Trooper Patrick Brookshier. Now let's talk about him for a minute, and we'll go back to Candance Owens and Charlie Kirk. But Patrick Brookshier and the DPS, and we could get into Gustavo Sanchez, and we could get into even the director of the Western District, who is Jose Sanchez, right? When you look at them and their connections, it, you're like, really? Really? And Patrick Brookshier, we didn't even know who he was. Now, just because we didn't know who he was doesn't mean that he has not been part of this case since 2019. He has been absolutely part of this case since 2019, but we didn't know who he was. And it wasn't until after our criminal complaint that we filed against Jose Sanchez, his director, um, who was uh, who was doing frisky business with a compromised real estate agent, uh, Danielle Amelia Nargari. Um, you know, he he is the top cop, and here he is being compromised by this compromised real estate agent. And come to find out, so Brookshire retaliated against us, right? He wanted to put a false narrative. He wanted to intimidate us. He wanted to do witness intimidation. I even called it stolen valor too. Um, because of what he did and everything like that with Richard. And Richard is his sacrifice is confirmed now as indelible, a national sacrifice for his whistleblowing, and deserving of the respect of the entire nation. And for him to try to muddy our son's name with false information, right? With false information is just despicable. Is just And he's a veteran. He's a veteran, so he knows better. I would say it was stolen valor, really, but I'll leave that to the legal. But I mean, all the witness intimidation, and the obstruction, and everything like that. That's solid. That's totally solid. He's up to no good, and he was reprimanded. He was disciplined. And I posted that up. This victory that we had with this DPS trooper, right? This trooper Brookshire. And but that was, clearly he's angry, but he needs to be angry at himself, right? He needs to be angry at himself because we didn't go after him. We didn't even know who he was. He came after us. He was the one that um, committed the crimes. Okay. And so now, it seems like he didn't learn the lesson at all. He's just absolutely off, you know, unhinged, and has deployed his wife and network, a personal network, to retaliate against, to issue us threats, right? And to put out misinformation, and to mislead people from the core of this entire, to our complaint against him, to the complaint against Jose Sanchez, the director. The core of it is that Richard Halliday was a whistleblower, and he was whistleblowing on the cartel criminal trafficking and evidence on the Walmart mass shooting, right? On the Walmart mass shooting. The very mandate that the Department of Public Safety is has the duty to protect us from these kinds of cartel criminal activity, right? And so, this is the core issue. They are setting a precedent that they don't even have to do what they're mandated by taxpayers to do, that they can absolutely skirt the DPS mandate mission, that they could skirt the DPS regulations and laws, and that they can absolutely protect FTO cartels, protect criminal actions like the Walmart mass shooting. Where is their outrage when it comes to the Mayella family, right? And to come to find out that that Trooper Brookshier friendship, his network with Emma Hernandez, and seems that Emma Hernandez is married to Lester Estebez, and Estebez works in the very same office as Director Sanchez's girlfriend, Danielle Nargari, in that same office. Now, I know I've gotten lots of information about him possibly being in CBP, and I know he's a firefighter, and so was he under Manny Chavira, right? Because of Gustavo Sanchez's family relation with Manny Chavira and with Nadal Baim. The three of them are family members. And of course, Gustavo Sanchez being a Texas Ranger under the DPS. Uh, this is, and he was assigned to us. Gustavo Sanchez was look, Trooper Brookshier. This is not the only time in 2025 that he was involved in our son's case. I can tell you that right now. Okay. And this was all hands on deck. So it was just so big. It was so big. So for him to retaliate against us in order for just because we are in these negotiations, these very vicious negotiations for the repatriation of our son's remains, that's weird, right? That's weird that he would be so upset, especially that he's a veteran, and especially that Danielle Nargari is a veteran, right? She has all of those disability veteran license plates on her fleet of cars, right? So it's just really weird, right? And what are they protecting? What are they protecting? And his wife is a Mejia, right? His wife is a Mejia, and that Mejia Fong family, and I'm not saying she owns Dreams Cabaret, but the Mejia Fong family are connected to Leilani Hart. They're connected to Leilani Hart. Okay. Uh, and Leilani Hart is a convicted criminal, confessing in an affidavit, uh, a notarized document, an affidavit to the worst type of crimes against children, facilitating the worst type of crimes against children, failing to report the worst type of crimes against children for decades, to illegal immigration problems, okay? To illegal immigration problems. She needs to be deported, and so does Mario Raskin Ortiz. And so this is, you know, uh, uh, the connections uh, to Director Sanchez through this Danielle Naragari, um, and and to Leilani Hart, um, and to the cartel, okay, the connections to the cartel, and then to act in ways that are against the repatriation of a fallen hero, a a U.S. Army soldier, when you were also a veteran. It's just strange, right? It just smells very stinky. It smells very stinky. And so a lot of this, this is hard evidence that we're doing. And I'm going to read the comments shortly. So this is hard evidence, and now I'm going to tie it together real quick, and then I'll read comments um, to the Charlie Kirk and to Candance Owens. I'm sure Candance Owens knows a lot about Turning Point USA. She was there for years, and she knows a lot about the people there. And half of Charlie Kirk's team was Mormon. Now, the university that he was put in a hole, you realize he was put in a hole without any protection. So he was getting hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, you're talking about Turning Point USA is huge, huge, millions and millions of dollars. Okay, um, you're telling me that Charlie Kirk did not have proper security? That they didn't do roof checks? Simple roof checks. They didn't put out maybe if they're going to put him in a hole, right? Because he was on the lowest level of anybody, right? The way that ground looks, it looks like he was put in a hole, which is uh, the perfect spot if you wanted to take someone out. Security didn't put any kind of bulletproof glass around him, because one thing that Candance Owen did was release a text messages between her and Charlie, where he was afraid of his life. He talked like Richard talked. He was afraid for his life. And his security did not do roof checks, put him in a hole, and he didn't even have body armor on. He didn't even, and you're talking about, not a poor guy. This guy had millions of dollars, and he was over even hundreds of millions of dollars. So, something is stinky. Something is very stinky. Um, and there's a lot of mutiny going on. And we see that in El Paso. We see that why they're not clamoring that they don't have a legitimate medical examiner, why they don't have a legitimate DA, why they don't have legitimate judges in the MAG court, why they don't have a legitimate chief of police in the El Paso ISD, why, and the list goes on, and on. Okay. And, why isn't the local media not clamoring, right? For law enforcement, for peace and order, it's because there is infiltration, because um, those that are not loyal to the American laws, to the Texas Constitution, to the American Constitution, they want their own laws. They don't want the American established laws. And that's why you don't hear the clamoring. They have a criminal enterprise. They're taking advantage, but they're not loyal to the United States of America, even though they're in the highest positions in the FBI, then the highest positions in the DPS, the highest positions in the military, the highest positions, you name it. There's infiltration. So, God talks about the weeds and the wheat, right? It is hard. It is hard to take those people out. They are masters of deception, absolute masters of deception. And so what I think that Candance Owens, and this is just my opinion, is that she has seen that this is so deceptive, that there is infiltration. Because why are there so many irregularities around Charlie Kirk's death? Right? Why don't, there shouldn't be. Just like, why are there so many irregularities around Richard's death? And why is there so many irregularities around even the assassination attempts of President Trump? And why is there so many irregularities around Julio Cordero's death? And you can go on and on. Why are there, hidden things around Glennon Oakley Jr.'s death, right? And you can go on and on with Asia Graham, and I know there's things that were hidden about Asia Graham's death. So I think she's just seeing that there is this infiltration, but I hope she understands that not everybody that the institutions are infiltrated by those that don't respect the laws, that don't respect their oaths, that don't respect the Constitution, that don't respect the country, right? And it's like they're trying to take over the country. They're trying to milk it for everything they can and take over the country. I think that the only thing, there's a lot of things that bother me, but the big thing that bothers me about this Mormon faction is that they call themselves Christians. They're not Christians. They're Mormons. And the reason why they're not Christians is because they do not believe in the Nicene Creed. They do not believe in the Apostles' Creed. They're not baptized with the Apostles' Creed. They're not baptized in the name of God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost. And that's what makes a person a Christian. They don't believe in the Athanasius Creed. And that's what makes a person a Christian. And so, fine. If whenever you're baptized or whatever your religion is, that's fine. But don't call yourself a Christian if you don't believe in the Trinity, if you don't believe in the Nicene Creed, if you don't believe in the Athanasius Creed, if you don't believe in the Apostles' Creed. Don't call yourself a Christian if you don't believe in the sacraments, right? You need to call yourselves Mormons. And when you put it on paper, because on paper and in their profiles, they call themselves Christians. And this is very deceptive, very, very deceptive. And, if they want to be Mormons, that's fine. I'm not, it's just that they need to say, I'm Mormon or I'm LDS or whatever, right? And don't try to be deceptive. And really, they should not be in the positions they are if they don't believe in their oaths. If they don't believe in defending the Constitution, then they should not be in that position. They cannot take that position as an FBI assistant, um, special agent if they don't believe in the Constitution of the United States that they're sworn to protect, right, and uphold. They need to go get their own country and live by their Mormon, whatever. If Mexico has granted them that land and everything like that, and, then that's where they need to go. But they don't need to be in very high positions, sworn to defend the Constitution, deceiving people in their profiles and deceiving people by breaking their oaths. And this is what Patrick Brookshier has done, because he's mandated to protect us from the cartels, and he didn't do that. He's not doing that. He's using his badge to attack a Gold Star family. And now he's, um, you know, indirectly attacking what because we filed a complaint on him and we won, he's been told he can't do that. And so now he's doing it indirectly, which is also criminal. So, it's, I think that Candance Owens is seeing the infiltration, but maybe she doesn't realize that there's really patriots in there that do honor. I know my husband honored that Constitution the whole time. And I know that my son is a national hero who protected the Constitution and did the right thing. And his sacrifice has been honored by the highest office in this land, the President of the United States. And so, I'm not against the institutions. I love the United States. I love the Texas Constitution. I lived in Texas. I love the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. I wish I knew it much, much better by heart. But I love it. I love the country. And, um, so I'm not, uh, I think her pointing fingers or whatever, I think she needs to do a little bit more research with all of that, because there is mutiny going on right now. There's been mutiny, absolutely, since 2015, 2016, especially when so much mutiny against President Trump that we've uncovered. That whole election, the uh, gosh, that Russia, I mean, and when you start diving into it, right? It's and then people bring up the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, and there's so much mutiny. I'm just is so much deception, so many people that um, are imposters. Um, they absolutely were pretending to be us. So it can get very messy, very convoluted, and very vicious. This is a vicious negotiation for the repatriation of our son's remains, because not only is the institutions there in El Paso, uh, infiltrated, but also in Chihuahua, it's just like it's a narco state. It's a narco state. So good news. Good news is that President Trump is stopping visas. Absolutely stopping visas, and that means they don't have access to their bank accounts. That they can't even open bank accounts without their visas. This is really, really important, and he's doing it for like narco politicians. And the rumor is, and this is a rumor, that half of Scheinbaum's people, had their visas removed. So, this is a big deal because they love to come over to the United States to do their banking. And, the like Carlos Manuel Salas, right? He lives in El Paso, right? He doesn't even want to live in Juarez, right? They want to live in El Paso. The same thing with Rafael Arellano Caron. He doesn't want to live, his houses are in El Paso, right? So they don't love the Constitution, the Texas Constitution, the laws of the land, but they want them. They want all the benefits from them without respecting them, without following them, without protecting them, without, uh, being a American patriot, right? They are absolute criminal, but yet they want all the benefits of um, of what made America so great. And that's the law. That's the law. So I hope that makes sense, connecting those dots together. And those that do not love the law of the land should not get visas because you can't trust them. They're going to route their criminal money laundering into our banks, right? That's what those visas are going to do. They're going to route their money laundering schemes and cross border trafficking crimes right into our banks. And this weakens our country. And so they can't be allowed to do that. And they can't be allowed to be FBI agents. They can't be allowed to be in our military. They can't be allowed to be in our judicial system. They can't. And that's why there needs to be a real um, litmus test, and it takes time. I don't know how all this is going to work out. God knows. God knows how it's going to work out. But we need to do the right thing. And so let me ask now. I mean, I'll read now some of the comments. Oh, thank you, Autumn. You're new. Thank you for coming on. I just wanted to say hello and God bless you. Hello back and God bless you back. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Laura, thank you so much for your prayers and your patriotism, all of your love. At this point, all businesses and all law enforcement agencies are very compromised. The Day of the Dead is their civilian war day. Um, yeah, but they're just so um well, we'll see. We'll see. Right? I just when you get to the point where you are killing pregnant women, stealing their babies and their organs to traffic them, when you get to that point, and the cannibalism stuff, right? And I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, right? But when you're doing that kind of evil garbage stuff with the Plenitude Crematorium and dumping the bodies there and trying to get rid of the evidence of your crimes, uh, it, you just don't have a chance anymore. You're just so weak. It's like your body starts to rot away too. Your mind starts to rot away. Your spirit rots away. Um, eh, you know, y- you're very, very weak. and you'll lose sight. And it's very hard for any kind of unity at that time. It's constant chaos, constant fighting, infighting, constant infighting, constant murders and death and cover-ups and blame game and constant drugs, constant um, you name it. You name the vice, they have it. How can they be disciplined enough to have any kind of um, power? They can't. They just they just end themselves. That's what they do. They just fade away. They just fade away. Um, and it's gone because they just are rotting away. They're just rotting away. It's kind of like the wicked witch and Wizard of Oz. You pour a little water on, and they just they can't even handle the water. By then, they're so dirty. So and they just kind of disintegrate. They just disintegrate. I wish my language was had a better vocabulary, because I wish I could express this as my heart wants to express it. And that's why don't even be afraid of them. I mean, of course, they're very evil and they're very vicious, and they do the worst type of crimes, right? Um, the worst type of crimes. That's why you need a pack. You need a pack. Um, Revolvers are a sure thing, right? Revolvers are a sure thing. Um, I'm not saying that the danger isn't there. What I'm saying is that they're very weak. They're very weak, and they can't be allowed. My big issue is, how can you allow them to be in the institutions, right? And have these business licenses and everything like that. Um, this is where, to even have bank accounts and all of that. So what you're seeing with President Trump is securing an economy. You saw that with all of his deals, with all of his peace. The peace comes with economic deals, and he's um, uh, securing economic freedom in the future with all of the deals, right? You have to have an economy. You can't be dependent on a certain country or whatever. And at the same time, he's taking away visas. Same time, he's turning off spigots from U.S. aid. And, at the same time, he's sending in what the DOJ to look at. To just observe, just go and observe the election, right? And they're all freaking out, right? They're freaking out in California because he's sending people just to observe how they do things there. They're freaking out. So it tells you a lot. It tells you a lot. If you're doing things right, or you don't care if people are observing. Matter of fact, all elections should be observed. So, yeah, I think that when God is with us, who can be against us? God is the heavyweight champion. And so keep your life in God, your spirit in God. The psyop is, um, to attack the very spirit that you're searching for. So they make the sacraments look bad, or they make the Trinity look bad, or they make um they make everything that's the liturgy. They make the liturgy look bad, and then they try to get you to look to a man, right? Let's look to this big preacher or whatever, to a man, instead of um marriage and ordination and confirmation and baptism and unction and you know uh confession. uh See, that's why Patrick Brookshire is doing what he's doing, continuing to retaliate because he has no confession, right? He's so angry. He's so angry. He can't just say, "Oh yeah, I'm a trooper. I messed up, and I need to defend uh, the people that I have charge over against the cartel." And I need to pray that this soldier is brought home. He can't say that. He has no confession. He doesn't have that. So that tells you something. That tells you something because that is a big indicator of Christianity, right? These sacraments are indicators of a Christian's life. And, if you keep in that, uh, it will make you stronger and stronger and stronger. You know, that's why we go and have the Lord's Supper together. It unifies us. It's it's called communion, right? Because it unifies us. So it makes you stronger and stronger and stronger, and your family stronger and stronger and stronger. And so, uh, that's where the real spirituality is, not in any man. So thank you so much, everyone. Um, and thank you for sharing. I see that you're sharing, and I'm just so grateful for that because we know that we're putting out a lot of information. Sometimes it seems like too much information, but that's that's the truth. We're just giving you the whole thing and not crumbs. So please share that and explain that to people you share it with, because it is a lot to digest. So thank you so much. God bless you. And let's make a difference, because the wonderful thing about the United States, the wonderful thing is we're not a monarchy, right? We are a government of the people, by the people, for the people, under God. And that is just a wonderful thing. And that's why all your shares it means so much, carry so much weight. And that's why they're always trying to deceive us, right? Because we are a government of the people, by the people, for the people. We have a lot of power, and we can drive them to do the right thing. So thank you so much. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing. Bye bye.